Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tell the Damn Story. That guy is Alex Simmons. He's a veteran of mostly traditionally published material, everything from comic books to fiction, to high adventure, even theatrical plays. He has some independent stuff with his Blackjack adventure series, Legendary. Me, I tend to be more independent. I have been traditionally published, but I'm fascinated with the independent side. But so between the two of us, we can come out from very different angles to help you make your journey smoother. And that's why we're here to Tell a Damn Story. And today we're going to talk about working together.
Yes.
We're going to talk about collaboration, and if you stayed to the end, I think we will have covered every angle that can be covered about collaboration, and we'll be doing it collaboratively.
Yes. And you know what? I'm also gonna give it. There'll be a link in the show notes,
Yes.
or the comment section, wherever it appears where you pick up our episodes, which will link with a list of collaboration challenges so you can be maybe a little bit more aware of what's out there, what you're up against. It'll remind you of what we've said, and that'll help you move forward in possibly your collaborative experience or expedition. Yes.
So you can see we are very not tongue-tied at all today.
No, she sells seashells by the seashore. Yeah, there we
Now,
go.
I'm not suggesting a drinking game, but if the audience were to do a shot every time we pronounce something, someone's going to be dead. So proceed with caution. All right, Alex, what do you got about collaboration? Why don't you give us some opening ideas here?
I'm going to start with one of the ones that I think that is probably one of the first bear traps of collaboration. First off, let's face it, collaborating with people. When I work with my students, when I teach my screenwriting students and some of my clients and coachings, I always say that a good collaboration is when the two parties or the parties come together with mutual respect and establish the playing field rules so that everybody's on the same page as much as possible. So I think one of the first bear traps of collaboration is if you do not talk about your expectations. If the two parties or multiple parties, if you're in a writing room situation, if everyone isn't somewhat as clear as possible on what's to be expected, what are we going for? What's the long range plan? What are we going to try to do? How do I see this project? All of that, get that out on the table so that you can discuss it and start to find where you agree, where you maybe have different ideas. I'm not going to say disagree, you just have different ideas, different approaches, just so you can get it down and it's out in the open. There's no surprises, no back alley, attacks.
Yeah, and it's really legitimate to do all this pre-gaming before you jump into the assignment, because if there's a problem, it'll rear its head pretty soon. You should also know what each person conceives of as whose project this is, right? If it's collaborative, it should be both of yours, right? If it's not collaborative, if it's, for example, I wrote some stuff for Alex Simmons. You know him, he's right there. And it was on his Blackjack character. That's not collaboration. That's it might be collaborative in parts, but it's his character, So the final word will always go in that situation with the owner of the character.
Now, I will
world, different story, but you got to be clear.
Yeah, I will bring up one thing, and this is not to challenge him, but hey, there was one Blackjack assignment that we did, at least I feel, more of a collaborative experience on, and that was that one that was going to be published by that independent individual for that fundraising anthology. And we pulled a character from the pulp era, which was not our character, was not mine, not Chris's, but it was a public domain character. And we popped that in with Blackjack, and we really worked that one out very much, I think, together.
Yeah, and for those of you who are very curious about that, we have actually two stories with two public domain characters. I did one with Sally the Sleuth.
Mm-hmm.
Cleaned her up. She kept her clothes on, so everybody relaxed.
It was not
Um,
Sally the, yeah, never mind. Okay.
yeah. And then we did the other character with yours. But in that situation, well, Sally the Sleuth did not meet Blackjack in
No,
that.
no, she didn't. No.
So the other character,
Agent. It was a secret
yeah,
agent. Yeah.
Agent X, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
We talked exclusively or extensively about what you were comfortable with and what you weren't comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
There are rules in the blackjack world, and that's part of the stuff that you need to know before you're going in.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
we never really followed up the rest of that project. So since that thing fell through, we have this material. Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah, we should talk about that later, collaboratively. Yes.
Collaboratively.
Yes.
So yeah, talking beforehand, really good idea. And knowing very clearly, everyone should know what everyone else thinks they're in.
And
Remember, we
that's
were going to form a comic book company way, way long time ago, and then there was this one young buck there. Like at the 11th hour, he's like, "Well, I want you to sign all the contracts." I said, "What are you talking about, signing contracts?" He says, "Well, because I'm going to own everything." We're like, "Yeah, get out of here, bro."
yeah. Yeah.
That's not what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. And that
So,
segues very nicely into number two of these things, which is the vague expectations. Yeah. Again, if you're just collaborating because you're saying, I'd love to write something with you. We should work on a project together. We should do something together. Okay, that's great. That's the intention. But what specifically is the project? What's it supposed to be? Who's it supposed to be for, audience wise or whatever? Getting clearer on what is the project and what do you expect to accomplish with it? You know,
right. And in clarifying that stuff, asking polite questions is going to get you more than saying, "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." So, one of the things that I've learned over the years is to respond with, "Well, say more on that," because you're not challenging anyone, but you want more information. And the more clear an idea you get about, well, this person thinks that I'm going to write the story and he's going to dot the I's.
yeah, how do I feel about that? Right.
Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
Or is
There's also this, I'm just noticing this because he's right, the tongue-tied thing today. I'm also noticing that Chris and I, we have our own, personality, our own style, our own way of saying things. But we're very respectful of each other. Our language with each other, we've known each other for so long, we could be more colorful in our exchanges, but we tend not to. It's just not how we roll. But I know that when some people have conversations, that conversation could be more colorful. But really, one of the things you need to do, and I say this when I tell my students about writing log lines or promos for things, I say,
right?
go for clarity first, not
Right.
cleverness.
Yeah. And
That's
then I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that's important. So whereas, Chris, you just made a suggestion about, what did you say? It was a tell me more about that or something like that?
Say more on
Yeah,
that.
right. And my
I'm
my
interested.
phrasing,
Say more. Yeah.
yeah, my phrasing is, how do you see that? How
Right.
do you see that
Right.
working out? Right. So that's my way of, it's not an attack. It's not a saying, well, it's not even saying, I don't understand what you're, it's, well, really, because what it's basically communicating is, give me some more information so I can see your vision more
Right.
clearly. And
And
that's more
speaking,
inviting.
yes, and speaking of that vision, we should talk about the vision for the project,
Hmm.
right? What do we see? Do we want to do a big whiteboard on, or any kind of board on, you like to do think bubbles, idea bubbles and that stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like to
mind
do
mapping, that
lists.
sort of thing. Yeah.
You mind map. I tend to do lists, put characters' names and, oh, who are this person, who's that person. And that's, once you get in, but slightly before that, ask how we're going to do these drafts. There's a million ways to do it. All right, I'm going to write some, send it to you. You edit it and then write some more. And then I'll edit that and then write some more. If you're comfortable with that, that could be fun. Some people say, well, listen, let's have a dual character, two characters, their point of view. And you tell the story from point of view. I'll tell it from this point of view. Boom. are you going to plot it out first? You know,
Mm-hmm.
do
Mm-hmm.
you want to pants it all the way? What
And
do
we'll
you
talk
want to
about that in a moment too. Yeah.
right? Do you want to break down the story? You know, one of the things that I used to love to do, I would get my hands on DVDs from conventions and that kind of stuff where they were talking about how they did these things.
Uh,
And there was a great one by one of the writers on Buffy. This is how long ago, how far back it goes. There was Whedon stuff, you know, he did talks, but this was just one of the guys in the, and they talked about the writer's room and how they broke the story. They would break the season. All right, we have 22 episodes or whatever, and the main arc of the season is going to be this. But here are the beats we want throughout, and this is
mm-hmm.
what we want at this episode, and that kind of stuff. For our purposes, that might be chapter breaking, you know, breaking the story by chapter, might be breaking. If you're going to work on just a short story, then okay, well, how many, you know, how many words are we talking? So then if we're
How
going to
many
hit these
scenes, even
things,
for
how
that
soon do
matter?
we have to hit them?
Yeah.
There's still, you know, you still have those building blocks of story, which we've talked about in probably 100, 150 of the episodes that are,
Give or take.
yeah. But knowing that you're on the same page with however many people you're doing it, you know, if
Mm-hmm.
it's a writer's room, they break the story and then everyone gets assigned episodes. And then you, when you submit those, you know, that's when the rewrite or the editing smooths out all the characters so they sound consistent throughout the season. It depends on what you're doing.
And again, you segued, or not necessarily segued, but you blended one of the other topics that tends to come up as a challenge for collaboration. So we were going before, we talked about vague expectations and we talked about sort of sort of mismatched vision. But now you're also talking about a stylistic approach,
Right.
you know, how Chris writes and how I write vary in
Right.
ways.
But
And
it, but
I was going to say in the early days, it was even more clear that, and again, I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's just the style was different. And I think one of the things that Chris, you mentioned when you were working on a Blackjack project, you said that you were more action based in certain ways.
oh yes, definitely. Because if you don't know by now, okay, 380 something episodes in,
Yeah.
but Alex Simmons's Blackjack character is a African American soldier of fortune in the 1930s. One of the subtle things about Tell the Damn Story that you pick up after the first 100 or 120 episodes is that I am not African American. I know it's subtle,
Yeah, we
but
kept it, but that's why we weren't doing videos for a long time.
so out of respect, right? We wanted to keep it low key, but that's one of the, out of respect, I don't venture into the deep soul searching or cultural nuances of blackjack. That's definitely Alex's domain. I almost approach him as an African American Captain America in the 30s. You know, it's action oriented, heroism oriented, and when there's opportunities for cultural flourishes, that probably gets suggested by Alex and inserted into the second, third draft or whatever. But that's, I think that makes sense for how we work together.
Right. And again, it's the style. The thing I was talking about in particular too was the style choices. I've seen many of Chris's other works, and if you haven't read any of his other works, shame on you. But you will find
Absolutely.
that his one of his styles, which is very similar to mine in this particular scenario, is we care a lot about characters. So I know that Chris's work is going to be very much character motivated, character generated. I'm going to care about the individuals going through whatever the plot is because
Right.
he's going to build that in. And I that's where we match up. Sometimes though, I'm more at times my style is about a little bit of flourish of the environment and
Yeah.
then it's setting up some sort of mood and everything and then getting the characters in there and having them respond to it. Just because sometimes I guess the best way I could phrase it is sometimes I use the environment as if it were a character. Right.
Right.
Okay.
And you also have a stylistic tendency to set the pieces on the board and then have them interact. So we were thinking of it as a chessboard.
Yes.
Alex would have all the pieces set, I would drop a Tonka truck onto this and then work around the pieces.
Yeah. But and then what you're seeing here is, I mean, some people may be sitting there going, "How the hell do you guys work together?" It's because A, we like each other, but we also respect each other's abilities, and we also, and this I think is key. Even if we didn't like each other, even if our respect were very conservative, all right, we respect the work. And
Yes,
subsequently, our end game is always to, as Chris will say, and will be on his t-shirts forever, serve the story.
yes,
Serve the story. Everybody wins if we bring our A game and we serve the story.
yeah.
So our styles, okay, you have a different style, I have a different style, but we're working on the same story again. How do we blend that? And that's what you would work on. We're not going to answer that question right now, but that would be a question collaboratively. How do we blend this so that it doesn't look like you wrote this chapter and I wrote that chapter, or you wrote these lines and I wrote that line?
What was the it was a two-story Blackjack publication we put out.
Fire and ice. Yeah,
Yeah.
trial by fire, trial by ice. Yeah.
If you want to see the two styles in effect there, you watch those two because yeah, I like the
Available on
match
Amazon.
almost immediately.
Yeah.
And Captain Cool over there slides into it and it builds. So there you go.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that these are inspiring thoughts on those of you who are going through collaboration. So if it sounds like we're meandering, it's because there's a million ways to do this. And we have, a limited amount of time. So we want to give you a taste of the what ifs,
All
you
right.
know.
So
Um,
let's hit them with another one.
know who your partner is before you start and have these conversations. And now Alex Simmons
Yeah.
is going to move us
So
forward.
we mentioned style, and possible clashing or figuring out how to blend the styles. And what else would come into that might be personalities, whether or not your personalities are blending or matching or clashing. So that's a factor. But we're gonna just let that one sit there and know that, okay, if I have to somehow adjust to you having a different style and how does that work? Understand the same thing applies for personality. Your personality is this, my personality is that. We're supposed to work together on this. How do we make that happen? So that's the question that you're going to try and look for an answer for. But where I want to go here, because I have notes here, where I want to go here is this one is interesting because it can sit or it can be a subtle thing that slides in there and almost for a while people don't even notice it. It's uneven workloads. So when Chris was talking about earlier about deciding, oh, are you going to do this? You're going to write chapter one and then I write chapter two, or what? When you're working out that plan earlier in the game, one of the things you also want to look at is who's responsible for what. So
Right.
there's a sense of balance in this project. There's a sense of we're each carrying our share of the load. Because otherwise, especially if you're having trouble with the story, if it's, you hit a complicated section, you really got to work through something. If in the back of your mind there's this other stuff going on, it's going to get in the way of solving the problem. So you definitely want to keep in mind, what did he agree to, or what did she agree to? What did I agree to? Okay, fine. Are we good there? Check in with each other every now and then. Make sure that the collaboration is working out as close to a partnership or a shared experience as possible.
Right. And you may have entered into a partnership where you've agreed, well, you do first draft, I'll do second draft. Talk that out so that you say, well, what happens with the third draft? Because things can change.
Yeah.
It could be for the better. I've told that Alex Simmons story a million times where, I did a comic strip from Badass Mofo magazine
Yep. Yep. You love
with
saying that too. Badass mofo.
Blackjack. It's come on, is that one of the better names
It's yeah,
for a
and it's
magazine you've
yeah,
ever
you're
heard of?
right. You're right.
Badass Mofo magazine. But when I handed it into or submitted it to Alex because it's Alex's character before he submitted it to Badass Mofo magazine, he did a pass through it. And because it was very early in my experience writing Blackjack, I didn't have the the dialogue tone right. And when I saw it printed, every line of dialogue was changed. And that was a shock to me, but it's his character, ultimately his responsibility. If you're doing something that is an original collaboration, that might really irk somebody if they, wait a second, I thought we were, I never saw the edits. What are we doing? So talk that out. And well, Alex, let me ask you a question, because we're talking about uneven distribution. What if, all right, I do a draft, you do a draft, I do a draft, you do a draft, and you do a draft, right? And you send it over to me, and I look it over and I change a word and send it back to you.
If you're asking me at this point in my life, I would go, if I didn't see why, I would ask you why,
Right.
so that I would understand, okay, what brought about this change? And you would explain it, because that's the
Well,
person you are.
sure, but that's a one word, and we would have that conversation.
Yeah.
But if the agreement was that you would do a draft, you would do a pass through it, and only one word was changed,
Oh, then
I may ask some questions. Well, what did you think about this moment, that moment, to make sure
yeah.
that we're getting, because I think the least
Oh, oh.
productive thing is it where the other side says, "Nah, I just thought it was really great."
Yeah.
Well,
No,
what
I
was
was
great
gonna
about
say,
it? Well,
I was gonna say,
everything.
there's
I don't think that person's carrying their weight,
a great
right?
example of what you're talking about, except for this last part of it, because you were carrying your weight, is the N word.
Oh, we had that conversation.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for the next three shots, guess which one of us was against using the N word?
And then you'd be wrong. Okay. So the funny thing there is, again, it's the 1930s.
Right.
There are different social expectations. Let's put it that way. It's not that word's been forgotten, because it hasn't, and there are more folks out there happy to use it still. But in the 1930s, there was less pushback against it, because a lot of black people just felt, what do we got to say about it? These fools are going to keep saying it. So I, for one, in writing Blackjack, tend not to use the word, but I'll get close to it. I don't like the word, so it doesn't show up. There's always something that blocks that word out. But Chris was making it very clear. Uh-uh. I'm
Right. Well,
when
the story was Blackjack confronting a redneck.
Yeah.
So characteristically, this redneck in this particular story was very drunk, if I remember,
Mm-hmm.
and very red of neck. And
And
yes,
nose
it
and
would
cheeks.
it would make a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the relationship with these two characters, I didn't think the character could come back if he called Blackjack the N-word. And the second, and not the second because it's less important, I felt this probably more strongly. I don't want to give anyone permission to use that word. So I try never to use it. Well, no, I never use it, period. Every once in a while, especially in the writers group, this is it sounds like a tangent, but it's very well directed. I had characters go back and forth, and there's one character used a word that we used to use in the 70s, which was, wow, man, that's a jip, right? And this one of the people in the writers group, she says, that's a slight on gypsies. I was this year's old when I learned that that's where that word came from.
Yeah.
I didn't even know in my head if it was spelt that way.
Yeah.
You know, I think
You
I
probably
did. I
saw
think it put
JIPS.
GYP.
Yeah.
Huh?
You probably
Yeah,
saw JIPS. Yeah.
yeah. But I respected it. I did confirmation research, right? A quick search, and there was some roots to that. So be open to, oh, is that
Mm-hmm.
um I will give you another one. Someone was doing a reading of City of Woe for me, just editorial reading and that kind of stuff. And they said, there's not enough diversity in this particular story. And I said, well, what diversity do you think is missing? Because there were males and females. And I take great pains with Mallory and Gunnar, who are the stars of City of Woe and City of Pain. I never talk about their color. I never talk about, we know that one of Gunnar's parents is Italian, but that's as far as I'll go because I want as many people to be able to invest in the characters as possible. It was an authorial experiment. What happens if you don't pin it down?
Mm-hmm.
Can people, right? So this person said, well, there's not enough clearly people of color. So I gave this explanation. And he said, I understand and appreciate your spirit, but people need to see. So I made sure, again, I keep Mallory and Gunner. You can see them any way you want. I have casting of either of them on of many different shades, and I even talked about and started to write a version where if you wanted to cast Gunner as a female, I knew who I would cast. He would still, he, she, they would be bigger and a little sloppier because that's who Gunner is. But I made sure that I was a little more clear. Like their lieutenant is African American. But again, I use that same thing. And the guy's like, I can't see it. He sounds very official. So can people of color not be very official?
He's not using
You
enough
know, and that
inflections.
guy backed up a little bit. Know what, how you're collaborating and what the expectations are, but also make sure bases are covered.
Yeah.
And that person was giving me everything he could, but very easily. And I've had editors that I've fired who said, yeah, it looks great. I found a couple of typos. Not what I'm paying for you. That's not what
Yeah.
I'm paying you for, McTavish. You know,
Far
I want
out.
more meat on that bone.
Yeah, far out. Yeah. Okay. We have one more. I mean, there are, as I said, there are others, but we have one more that I wanted to focus on, and that is the final version. What do you consider? And again, the segues were nice because we kept talking about, back and forth. You do a draft, I do a draft. Whatever. Okay, great. We've done our drafts respectfully. What's the last word? What's the final version? How do we determine that? Who gets to, and if there's some pushback on that, how do you solve that?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake to say we're doing 4 drafts and that's it. I think the better rule of thumb that I would suggest is we do it until there's no more major questions. And the questions are not, well, I always saw that character in a plaid skirt. It's not going to affect the story unless it was the plaid skirt that proved that person was
Because
whatever.
we could see his hairy legs. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not a skirt, it's a kilt, god dang.
Yeah.
But who the killer is, or
Mhm.
who gets the crown at the end, or whatever
Mhm.
those are major plot points, and those have to be mutually satisfactory for you to have come to the end. So you can shoot for, look, let's do 2 drafts each, and then we'll collaborate on the last draft. Or do you have any other problems, any other questions? Is there anything else that is sticking out that really bothering you?
Yeah.
That would be my rule of thumb. How about you?
I think that's all well and good and wise. And the only other thing I would add to that is if there's an impasse. One of the things about collaboration is, let's say it's between two people at this point, is you both theoretically have equal voting rights here. So you've hit an impasse and you can't seem to agree on this thing. Then you need a tiebreaker. And that can be a reader, that can be an editor, that can be someone who both of you respect. But I would go with, okay, what is it we're sort of stuck on? Let's have somebody read this and get some feedback. So take
Right.
it outside of the dynamic duo there for a moment, see what the reactions are, and see if by having this additional input allows one or both of you to go,
Yeah.
okay, I hadn't looked at it like that. Okay,
What's
so
the asterisk?
yeah,
Asterisk is you have to agree on the reader.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
My wife's going to read it.
Hey, if the goddess were going to read, I would, I
Yes,
trust her. I trust
but
her.
Glorious is in fact a rare case.
Bias? Yeah.
Now, you know what? She would do the metaphoric pat on the head for both of us. That was so great.
Yes.
Fantastic.
But did you like it? Well, it
Right.
was really
It was
very,
beautiful. I loved it.
yeah,
And then we'd have to ask specific questions because she's so kind
yeah.
until she said, I didn't understand where the crocodile came from.
There you go. There you go.
That's what you'd have to know that that's part of what you have to do.
I
But
do
yeah,
that in my class, and I find that sometimes people are reluctant, just like you're saying. They're either because they're kind or because they're thinking, oh, I don't know if I should say anything, or they think nobody's going to agree with me, or I'm going to look like
I'll
an
get an
idiot,
F
or
plus.
I don't want to hurt somebody's feeling. All of those things come up, but it's really about not only the individual feeling that they can share their thoughts with you,
Right.
but also that you are open to hearing it. Whether you agree or not, you need to be open to hearing the
Right.
feedback because
And
that's the only way it serves you.
you also need to choose wisely because there is the two kind, right?
Hmm.
And there's the I am a critic. So
Or
that's
I would
someone
have
who,
written it this way.
yeah, well, we're going to get to that person in a minute. The
Oh,
critic
okay.
is I must find fault. That
Oh,
person. You see them online all the time. This stinks because this, then don't watch it.
yes.
If you don't like the show, don't buy a ticket, baby.
There
And
you
then
go.
there's the either wannabe writer or the person who wishes they were in on this project. And there's a instead of the crocodile, I would have had zombie ostriches. Yeah, well, then write your own story, right? So know who you're going to. Right?
What an interesting image. Animal Farm goes zombie. Okay.
If you're gonna go for images, I
Yeah.
always try and use a humorous image that'll stick in their head.
Yeah.
So
Zombie ostriches. Yes.
yes,
Wow.
right.
Okay.
If it's a meaning something that is completely inorganic to the story, right?
Yeah.
And just because they want to be the writer,
Oh,
you
it's a
want
giant
someone
mechanical
who
spider.
yes, that's a great example. I forget which producer that was.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
produced a bunch of the Pirates of the Caribbean and all that sort of stuff.
And he
But this
produced Will
this
Smith's,
Kevin Smith, a whole different Smith.
yeah.
It was
No, but I'm
it
saying Will Smith
eventually got there. But
yeah,
he
yeah,
the
yeah.
story goes from Kevin Smith. Sorry, Kevin, I'm telling you a story. He got hired to do Superman Lives. And he did all this stuff, and the guy said, well, he's not gonna wear the costume, he's not gonna wear the uniform. And you know what's really people love giant spiders. Let's have a fight. And it was so inorganic to the story. Kevin left the project and all that as far as I could tell. But a couple years later, he went to see a reboot of the Wild Wild West that this guy also produced. I think I know who it is, but I don't want to get sued, so let's leave that alone.
Okay.
And there was a giant mechanical spider fighting the Wild Wild West guys,
Yeah.
and he didn't
James
care.
West and Artemis Gordon. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
he didn't care where it was in what story it was in. He just wanted to see that in there. That's that Hollywood just sticking your thumb in the pie. So be careful of those people. You're collaborating and also feedback. Someone like a Bill McKay, yeah,
Oh,
right?
yes, yes.
Experienced, has written a billion stories, doesn't need to write your story, even handed in his temperament or their temperament, and you get really valuable feedback that way.
There were three producers on that. I don't know which one was the spider dude. So, folks, do your own research. There you go.
Just Google Kevin Smith Superman Lives story and you'll get it. And
There
he's
you
a
go.
funny storyteller.
Okay.
So
All right. So,
so yeah, I think we've gotten a bunch of different things done on this
yeah,
collaboration.
and as I said,
Uh
there'll be a list at the end that you can click and download so you can look at. There's a few more in there for you, your edification, right?
in
But
those
just
situations, the more you know.
yes, the more you'll run. No, again, Chris and I, as I said, and I don't think I say this enough in public. Chris has been a buddy and a partner and a friend for a long time and has, on several occasions, working on projects with him, have enabled me to get through some difficult times. So, if you can find a good partner, a good collaborator, a good writing buddy who you want to work with, please do. And of course, you can have your own separate experiences absolutely as well. But sometimes it's fun to just, get into the trenches and work on something with somebody else and have a good time with that.
I agree. Thank
Okay.
you very much, sir. And I wouldn't have done any of that stuff if you were an inspiring person. So there you go.
Oh, shucks.
Yes.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Chris, what should they do?
If I think there's three things this week. If you have mercy on us, you'll like and you'll subscribe just to keep us off the streets. But some of this conversation may have inspired questions or challenges, some comments you want to make, and there's a space down below somewhere where you can make those comments or get to us. Was it TTDS on air at
Yeah,
Gmail.
we know which one of us uses the email address more.
Yeah. We were doing a drinking game, so
Yeah,
someone just fell off the chair. There you go.
I'll put that in the comment section too.
Let us know. Let us know what you think and what we can do and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Folks, be well, live long and prosper, all that good stuff. Chris, as always.
That's a copyright infringement.
Okay, I'll do it this way.
I'm not sure what that meant.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Go off now and tell your own damn story.
Bye-bye.